The throne hall of the Galactic Empire rang with laughter as the hologram flickered to life. Projected above the obsidian floor was a single warship, drifting at the edge of imperial space. Its hull scarred, asymmetrical, and inelegant by Valerian standards. The admirals chuckled, the nobles sneered, and even Emperor Kelrix allowed his crest to flare in amusement. Such a small vessel had crossed their sensor net without clearance, without escort, and without fear. The Valari were ancient rulers of half the spiral arm, masters of plasma geometry and harmonic shields. Their war fleets blotted out stars, and their victories were studied as mathematical proofs. To them, this lone craft was not a threat, but an interruption, a curiosity drifting into history's footnote. An aide announced that the ship bore no imperial registry, no recognized faction code, and no active shield modulation. Its weapons signatures were archaic, projectile-based, inefficient, and laughably outdated by every known metric. The court roared again, some calling it a merchant wreck, others betting on pirates desperate or insane. Emperor Kelrix rose slowly and gestured for silence. "Order this relic seized," he commanded. "Let it be dragged before us so we may learn who dares trespass so boldly and so foolishly." The admirals bowed, already calculating how many drones would be wasted on the capture. Yet even as commands were issued, a junior sensor officer hesitated. There was something strange about the ship's readings, something that did not fit neatly into Valeri doctrine. Its energy profile was quiet but dense, compressed like a coiled predator rather than a dying machine. The officer spoke up despite the risk, noting that the vessel's internal structure suggested layers of redundancy far beyond necessity. Its hull composition appeared crude but stubborn, designed not to deflect damage, but to endure it. The laughter softened, though no one yet felt true concern. The Emperor dismissed the warning with a flick of his claw. "Durability without elegance is the mark of a species that expects to be hit," he said, "and survives only by luck. Prepare the boarding action." "Bring me there, Captain." Far away, aboard the silent warship, human eyes watched Valeri's ships maneuver into position. No alarms blared, no frantic movement followed. Only calm voices and practiced hands. The crew had seen this before. Arrogance was universal, and laughter always came first. Asterisk as imperial cruisers closed in, Valari's sensors probed the unknown vessel more aggressively. They found no fear response, no attempt to flee, and no diplomatic hail. The ship simply continued its steady drift, engines idling like a resting animal. Boarding pods launched in ceremonial formation, their commanders eager to report an easy victory. The Empire valued spectacle, and even a capture was performed like theater. Inside the pods, soldiers joked about souvenirs and promotions. The first breach cut cleanly through the hull, yet what awaited them was not chaos, but order. Corridors were narrow and utilitarian, built for function rather than beauty. Every surface bore scars, old welds, layered reinforcements, and marks of past repairs. The soldiers advanced and realized something unsettling. There were no exposed conduits, no fragile systems, no obvious weaknesses. The ship was not designed to avoid damage. It was designed to keep fighting through it. Then they heard the footsteps. Slow, deliberate, unhurried, echoing from deeper. Within the vessel, the Valari warriors raised their weapons, instincts sharpening despite themselves. The humans emerged without armor, without visible weapons, and without fear. Their eyes were focused, assessing, measuring, and calm in a way predators recognize in other predators. A single human spoke, asking in clear galactic standard why the Empire had chosen hostility instead of word-subording. Commander laughed nervously and declared the humans under arrest. The human response was a sigh, heavy with experience, not surprise. They had hoped, it seemed, that this time might be different. Back in the throne hall, sensor feeds began to glitch. Boarding pod telemetry cut out one by one, not explosively, but quietly. No distress calls followed. No triumphant signals returned. Admirals argued over interference, over faulty equipment, over improbable coincidences. Yet the silence from the warship persisted, unbroken and intentional. It was the silence of control, not confusion. The junior officer spoke again, voice shaking. He identified the ship at last. Translating ancient data fragments recovered from forgotten archives, the name carried little meaning to most present. But the historical annotation froze the room. The designation read simply, Human Defense Vessel, Independent Operations Class. The Empire laughed once more, reflexively, desperately. Humanity was a minor species, a late arrival, fragmented and politically messy. Yet the annotation continued, describing human doctrine in terms the Valari had never favored: endurance over elegance, adaptability over perfection, escalation as a last resort but a decisive one. The laughter began to die, replaced by an unfamiliar emotion. Asterisks. The Empire prided itself on records, yet the files unfolding before them felt like warnings. Rather than history, human ships were statistically inferior in raw output, slower in maneuver, and crude in construction. But every recorded engagement ended the same way, with the humans still present when others were not. They fought wars of attrition willingly, even eagerly, where others withdrew to preserve fleets. Humans pressed forward, calculating loss as a resource rather than a failure. Their warships were not masterpieces, they were survivors. As more data surfaced, the throne hall grew colder. Accounts spoke of human vessels continuing combat, with entire sections destroyed, crews rerouting life support manually, commanders refusing retreat even when victory seemed mathematically impossible. The Emperor's crest dimmed as he read the final line of one report: humanity does not seek war, but when war arrives, they finish it. This sentence lingered like a threat. Finally understood. At that moment, the lone warship changed course. Its engines flared, not in attack, but in assertion. A tight beam transmission cut through imperial channels. Addressed directly to the throne, a human voice spoke calmly, stating that the boarding action had been neutralized with minimal casualties. The crew was alive, restrained, and being treated according to human conventions. The tone was polite, almost apologetic. The message continued, explaining that the vessel was on a long-range patrol. Its mission was deterrence, not conquest, observation, not provocation. However, any hostile action would be met with proportional and escalating response. The admirals demanded immediate retaliation, pride screaming louder than caution. They called for fleet deployment, for overwhelming force, for annihilation. Yet calculations now ran differently. Weighted by uncertainty and fear, human weapons were not elegant, but they were numerous, redundant, and brutally effective at close range. Human tactics favored chaos, deception, and refusal to break. Worst of all, humans adapted mid-battle faster than Valari doctrine allowed. The Emperor hesitated for the first time in his reign. Victory was no longer guaranteed, and defeat carried a cost beyond ships. To lose, to a species once laughed at, would fracture the Empire's myth of inevitability. Another transmission arrived. Shorter this time, it offered terms, not of surrender, but of disengagement. The humans would leave imperial space and return their captured soldiers unharmed. The room was silent as the Empire faced a truth it had long avoided. Power was not always loud, and dominance was not always beautiful. Sometimes it arrived quietly, waited patiently, and survived everything thrown at it. The Valari fleets remained poised, weapons charged, formations tight, yet no order came. Only the echo of a choice the Empire had never practiced before. To not strike when insulted felt like weakness, yet to strike now felt like suicide. Human record showed something else, something even more unsettling. They escalated only when forced, but once pushed, they did not stop at victory. They dismantled threats completely, politically, economically, and culturally. The Emperor studied the hologram of the human ship once more. It was still there, still calm, still waiting, not taunting, not threatening, simply enduring. He realized then that humanity's greatest weapon was not their guns or ships. It was their patience, forged by a violent homeworld and a long history of surviving themselves. They expected conflict and prepared for it without drama. A decision was made, not announced loudly, but carried through quiet channels. The Empire would stand down, withdraw its fleets, and accept the human offer. Pride would be swallowed to preserve the future. When the Valari soldiers were returned, shaken but alive, their reports spread quickly. They spoke of humans sharing food, guarding prisoners from harm, and explaining exactly why resistance had failed. Not with mockery, but with unsettling professionalism. The warship powered down its weapons and slowly turned away. Its engines burned steadily, not in triumph, but in completion. Humanity had not come to conquer, only to remind the galaxy it existed. As the ship vanished into the dark, the Empire felt smaller than it had the day before, not weaker in arms, but poorer in illusions. They had laughed at a silhouette, nearly paved with their future. News spread beyond imperial borders, faster than censorship could contain it. A single human warship had entered Valari space, and left without firing a shot. Empires whispered, alliances recalculated, and ancient doctrines were quietly revised. Humanity's name began appearing in strategic briefings, no longer as a curiosity but as a constant, not the strongest, not the fastest, but the most stubborn variable in any equation. The species that did not blink first. The Valerian Emperor addressed his court days later, his voice measured and changed. Laughter, he said, is a luxury reserved for certainty, and certainty is rare in a living galaxy. We mistook silence for weakness and endurance for primitiveness. From that day forward, human ships were given wide berth. Not out of fear alone, but out of respect, hard-earned, and quietly enforced. When a human warship appeared on sensors, the laughter never came. Because the galaxy had learned the lesson the Empire learned too late. That some wars are lost the moment you stop taking your enemy seriously. And humanity had survived long enough to become exactly that enemy.